Mark here for Wisdom and Knowledge 5. And who has more wisdom and knowledge than my next guest? He is not only, the Mandalorian, he plays the Mandalorian on, the hit Star Wars series. He is also a high school girls soccer coach. He is the grandson of uh, John Wayne. And please
Yep.
welcome Brendan Wayne to the podcast. Thanks so much, Brendan, for coming on.
Brother, I'm so excited. I can answer the question that you asked at the beginning. Who has more knowledge and wisdom? Wisdom and knowledge. Anybody who can walk and talk.
There you go. I love it. And this is the way, Brendan. This is
This
definitely
is
the
the
way.
way. That's how you get to learn.
Now you're in LA and you're LA born and bred, and you've been there for most of your life. Although I remember last time you said that you spent some time in Argentina, right? Because Argentina won the World Cup.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's not why I spent it, but yeah, my sister was out there, and so I had a really lucky opportunity to go live while she was there. So it was really fun, and we Argentina was exceptional. That's actually
Mhm.
the first place that I realized. Um, I was watching the junior Bocas there, and it was amazing to watch these guys. They worked on the beach, like in the sand,
Oh,
whereas
sure.
like that's more of a specialty workout maybe with groups because it's not available or whatever. These guys were working on the beach in the sand, so their fitness level was off the chart. So
Mhm.
just as an athlete, I really loved being able to watch these guys work out. Later on, my love for soccer really, or football, really kicked in at a high level, probably about 5 years later. But yeah, I was kind of like the first time I was like, oh, this is pretty good.
Yeah, I got a friend that from who lives in LA that I knew from LA, and he's originally from Cantabria, Spain. Well, his mom was the clothing designer for the Ferrari line of Puma. So he moved down
Yeah,
from Cantabria, Spain to Buenos Aires. So he lived in Argentina for years and he loved it. And I just watched last week on Paramount Plus Ariel, Argentina, and it was unreal. They said that they have like 36 different soccer stadiums in Buenos Aires alone, and Boca Juniors and River Plate are right next to each other.
yeah. So it's funny you say River Plate because my
Or is it
or my
Plate?
it's Plata.
Ah, yes.
But one of my coaches, one of that I work with at Atletico SoCal, the club I coach with, um, was AC Milan and River Plate, their strength and conditioning coach for everybody, all their players under 21. And so he is now, Gustavo is now here training like my kids and anybody who
Mhm.
comes. And it's funny you brought, we literally just touched how small this world is because you're talking about AC Milan earlier. We talked about, Argentina. He's from Argentina. He's strength and conditioning coach both with AC and River, and now he's out here and coaching and making these kids unreal. By the way, unreal. So yeah, that's hilarious. But I am an LA boy, born and bred, grew up in the Valley. Um, Still live in the Valley. I lived in San Francisco, the dreaded uh, NorCal, where the Giants are, disgusting San Francisco
There you go.
Giants. Had to get my slur in there. They that's where that's I lived up there for about 2.5 years. Should have bought up there. Boy, should I have bought up there. Oh my God.
Oh, back
Um,
then, yeah.
yeah, and literally it was like 20 minutes later after I left the place I was in was like, but yeah, um, I did that, and then I lived in Santa Barbara, but I mean, I'm a California kid. Like I can't. I like being able to go get the hell out when I want,
Mhm.
you know. But I think Sicily will be my final landing spot.
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
and I mentioned to you before when we were chatting, I'm big into like the European brands, like the
Oh yeah.
European sports apparel brands. And I don't know if have you ever heard of this brand called Era?
Oh yeah.
ERREA. Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually just ordered a pair of their shoes, and I guess they don't make shoes anymore. I had to get them
Oh,
from France. They're just like tennis shoes,
yeah,
but
but
I emailed the company and they're like, no, they have them on their website, but they're not for sale. And they basically said, no, they're out of stock. You'd have to go to, and who's gonna that you'd have to go to an outlet, and we don't have them in America.
no, that's so
Yeah.
funny. That's amazing. I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
because
I can't believe
well, you
you've
know what
heard of
though?
that brand.
I spent a month in Italy. So
Okay.
like, you
The
see
other
a
one
lot
is
of different
Lotto. The
things.
other one that you can get here because it's a
Lotto's
big
huge.
tennis, yeah,
Yeah.
brand is
Yeah.
Lotto. Those are great brands.
I actually shouldn't say Lotto's huge. I take that back. That's my old age speaking up because Lotto earlier, I mean, they were big in tennis, and tennis was so big when I was younger, especially with Connors and McEnroe and Borg and Ivan
Agassi
Lendl
too, yeah.
and Agassi even later on and who was the other one? Agassi's rival.
Pete Sampras was one too.
Pete
Everyone always said I
Sampras.
looked like Pete Sampras.
Yes, good one.
You know?
I like that. I
Yeah.
like that.
Oh yeah.
All right, Sampras.
Yeah, right. There we go. Well, I want to talk a little bit about how you got into acting, but you of all people can explain that, you're not just hand given these roles. You have to go in, right? And everything that you've done, you've basically gone in and auditioned, right?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten even with my success on this show. Um, I I don't generally get just offers at this point. I still self tape. I just self tape for a Kevin Bacon pilot that I'm dying for. I did his, he did an episode of The Closer with Kira, his wife, Sedgwick, and I was on that. I'm pretty sure I beat Mark Cuban out for the role. I kid you not, he
Mm.
came out right before me. And it was funny. Everybody introduced themselves, and there's, Kevin Bacon, you know, sitting there. And he's like, "Hey, I'm Kevin Bacon." And I'm like, "Oh shit!" And I didn't even think about it. Like, I wasn't trying to be a smartass. I just was like, "Duh." And then, of course, I ended up playing a guy who "Duh" was his middle name, so it
Hmm.
was great. And then when I try to get roles, I just read a script. I just read a script. It's hilarious. I looked at the producers on this, and I'd done, Legend of Hell's Gate with my friend Tanner Beard. He's an executive producer on it. He did a whole thing on Holy Moly. He's a golfer. He's got a whole brand. He's a big producer, good director, great writer, whatever. Just a great kid. I know he's an adult now, but uh, and my sister is one of the executive producers on this movie. Um, and my agent's very excited. This is a good Western, blah blah blah. And I look at it and go, "But my sister's a producer." And he's like, "You gonna call her? Give her." I was like, "Nope. It's just not. It's not in me to do it that way." And I probably could get more jobs um, that way on a certain level, but I don't know. Like for me, the process is worth it for the most part. It's a hard one. I know I got to fight it. I gotta go and be like, "Hey, John, uh, will you give Peter Berg a call? He's doing a Western." I didn't do it. And, for whatever reasons, I don't know if he even saw my audition for it. Those kind of things happen.
Hmm.
And it's, uh, especially with, self tapes now, nobody, you don't go in anywhere anymore. You don't meet anybody, people in person. Um, so it's a lot tougher because I think in the room I do my presence is felt, and to not have that opportunity can be detrimental. But yeah, I mean, I read the scripts, I hear about things. I probably have a better chance because of the show I'm on, because of I've actually done on the show. So it's like that kind of balancing act. Um, and it's Hollywood's a uh, kind of a pay to play area. So like if I can show you that I will get you money in because of what I'm doing, because of everything else I'm doing, then they're pretty good about just bringing you in and being like, "Hey, let's get you in here." But we'll see. I've worked with some incredible directors. That always helps. Sometimes they just think of you and put you in. I've worked with Peter Ramsey, Taika Waititi, Dave Filoni, obviously John Favreau. Um, Hopefully your work speaks to them and they see you in a light that gets you some more work.
Exactly. Now, let me ask you something. Was there, when you were growing up, what were some of your favorite like movies and TV shows? Were you inspired by any of those to get into acting?
Yeah, it's funny because people would be like, "Oh, your grandfather," and of course he would influence it. But when it's I don't know, when you know the guy, it's a little harder to, I don't know, like think, "Oh, I want to," like I looked at my other grandpa who used to build houses, and like my pop who was a Navy pilot and then owned a jet charter company, and those were things that really I thought, "Oh, that's tangible." You know what I mean? But then you watch Rocky and you think to yourself, "Oh, I want to be a storyteller." That's amazing. Like I just thought my grandfather was a cowboy. I just thought that was the
Yeah, I
way it was.
remember you
But
mentioning
then you
that.
go see movies that aren't like persons you're related to, and you're like, "Oh, I want to be Apollo Creed," or "I want to be, I want to be uh, uh, Dally or Winston, any of those guys in The Outsiders, and then Rumblefish, and you're like, "Oh, I want to be like those guys." And it's like this constant feed of things of, like what you, I don't know what forms you in that era. In the 80s, for me, punk rock, um, anything from, I mean, for me, the Clash is, I don't know that anyone will ever rise to the level of the Clash for me musically. And so Strummer was my idol. I wanted people to think I was Joe Strummer. I wanted to be a badass like Joe Strummer. Swedish Fish,
Hmm.
dude must have been cool. I couldn't understand a word he said. He was a DJ. And then you know, like videos, it's that song. What is it? Video killed the radio star.
Yeah, the
That
Buggles.
was
I
that,
know that
yeah,
one. Yeah.
and it was like all of a sudden I went from uh just listening to the radio to all of a sudden I was watching music videos and Duran Duran came on. You're like, oh my God, these chicks
Those were
are,
the times, you know?
I mean, unreal. They were pressing the edges. And then you got, I don't know. So for me, the visual medium of storytelling went to a different level. It wasn't just stories, but these songs were telling stories.
Mhm.
Thriller, like, he was my neighbor
Yeah,
growing up.
so
Tito
many
Jackson
Michael
was my
Jackson
baseball coach.
videos. Jeez.
Yeah, right. And they were movies, and you got Quincy Jones. So it went from you imagined the songs you were listening to you were watching the movies of the songs you were listening. Even Weird Al, you were
Oh yeah.
literally watching, Eat It, and you're like, oh my
He
God,
is great. Yeah.
he's incredible. And so like, yeah, that was, yeah, I mean, the Dukes of Hazards, I understand that it doesn't age well for people. I get it. Um, and
But it was
but
family
gosh,
oriented. You know, I've
oh, it was,
interviewed
it
John
was,
Schneider
it was.
before, and
Yes.
they even
Uh,
had one of the episodes, they even had, an African American dentist who was the
okay.
mobile dentist.
And
It had
and
nothing to
they
do with
fought
race. It
for
was all
those
about
things for
family. Yeah.
everybody. Yeah. But it was like those Hill Street Blues.
Oh, another one.
Um,
Yeah.
where I mean my mom loved MASH, and that was a little
Sure.
intense for me as a kid, but I still was watching with Barney Miller, like hard hitting shows, but at
What
the same
about
time,
Rockford
even
Files?
the
That was in the
Rockford Files,
Valley. They
James
get so many
Gardner.
things in the Valley.
Well, how about, and in the beginning, his intro of Rockford Files, he's driving off the Santa Monica Pier, makes a right, and for 22 years, the way I raised, and put a roof over my head was bartending at a restaurant called the Lobster in Santa Monica. No matter if I was acting or what, even during season one of Mando,
Mhm.
I was bartending at the Lobster, and so like I would know he drove his gold, Camaro out. It was Camaro, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. His was the Camaro, and then Smokey and the Bandit, Cannonball Run. I wanted to drive cars, beat up people. I want to drive cars fast, muscle cars fast, beat up people, and protect the community. Those are the things that I learned from my shows when I was growing up. Like that was really important. Like we had to watch out for each other. There were people who needed protection, and then there were other people who would protect you. And that was kind of like, and you always paid it forward, and it always kind of circled in this crazy, like, paying it back. We always had values, and those shows showed that. And that was what I grew up with. Like that was really important. And I also grew up in a big family, and that was kind of how we paid it around in our
Even things
neighborhood.
like, the greatest American hero. You're a Dodgers fan. There was one where
I
he
love
flew
that.
into Dodger Stadium.
I
Remember, he
just
played
stated
like a pitcher or something.
yeah, I mean, what a great show. Oh my God.
And to this day, it still stands the test of time. I mean, William Katz still does what you do, goes to these Comic Cons and talks to fans.
Absolutely. And is it just a stud? Like again, another guy, who was in one of my favorite movies, Big Wednesday,
Mm.
which was, you know, I'm a Valley guy, so in that movie, it's about these West Side Surfers and their growth. But at one point, they they get in a fight with Vals. We were the Vals, with who come into their party, and there's this huge fight, and it's just and like a real like an old fashioned fight where we just beat each.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the way we grew up. You'd drive out through the tunnel going out to Malibu, and you'd hit one of the tunnels, and it was spray painted, and no one ever repainted, and it said "Val's Go Home," and it was like a rite of passage. We were like, sweet, and I'd go surf, and I knew on any given day somebody might not want me in their water, and that was the West Side Surfers, the Malibu boys, water, and
Mm-hmm.
so. And back then, Malibu, there was money there, but at the same time, there were some people who'd been there before it was, the moneyed section of the beach, and so they were keeping theirs. It wasn't like, you know, 50 rich kids sitting on their boards out there. It
No.
was some, scraggly dudes who, shaped their own board and figured out how to make it work, and this was their plot of land, and it was I loved it. Like and then we earned each other's respect through either, getting beat up, which happened a few times, or beating some people up. And that was, the way it was. And it wasn't mean. I wasn't there to kill anybody. It was just people growing up. And it was an innocent, if there is an innocent way to go through that, that's what we lived through. It was the way I grew up. And I don't think anybody should do it now. Don't fight, whatever. But if you got to protect somebody, who's downtrodden or we can state, well, maybe you should stand up. Maybe we need a little bit more of that. But
Well,
that's a side note.
and I think with those shows too, at least for me, it brought so much camaraderie in school.
Oh,
We have so much things to talk about, whether it be Facts of Life, The Cosby Show, Family Ties, and it seems a little bit more family orientated back in those days.
oh, I agree. And people, but people in my community would say, well, this is art. We need to have, freedom. But, I think responsibility, we had very few channels back then. You know what I mean? Like we
Oh,
had
that's a
three
good point.
channels when I was growing up. And then if you were lucky, you had like, eventually late in the 80s, we got like the movie channel. There was one. Somebody had On in my neighborhood, somebody had the Z channel, and that was kind of like cable. And then later on, it became a proliferation of channels and a glut of stories retold when we have so many stories we need to be told. And I back to what you were saying, where there is, we the name of your wisdom and knowledge 5 is really important, because when you represent something, when you're allowed to have tell stories, um, responsibility of audience and who you're talking to and who you're reaching and what you're doing, I think has to be there. And I'm not, I'm not a censor. I'm not, but I do think we really have to think about what everybody's saying. As a father, my kids are exposed to things that I never was exposed to very
Mhm.
readily.
Sure.
We had to work a little harder, and we definitely didn't see as much. It's not always good. I mean, I think there's some things that we really need to shed light on, and the inequalities and all those things we really have to shed a light on. At the same time, I think there's a certain value system uh, that should be there, that so we value ourselves, value our bodies, value those each other, really most importantly each other, and constantly reinforcing those values through stories that we're presenting, I think is really would be incredible. I think that's what I love the most about being uh, in Star Wars
Mhm.
and being a part of this, and specifically the Mandalorian, is that it is a tale about communities and communities fighting to find what's important for them constantly, and about a man who is fighting to find out his value system from episode one to where we 24, um, and now going on to a movie. We are constantly seeing the growth of not only Grogu, the kid, and him, and him understanding his strength and power, but also, you know, the Mandalorian is literally finding out what he's testing his everything he's believed in to this point, but he's constantly challenging it.
Yeah.
I do this, so I do it. So, bah, he's living and testing everything he believes in, and he is forging his own value system based on the beliefs that he grew up with, the monolith of belief and faith and hope that was behind him. And it reminds me a lot in a different way, but of All My Sons, the play by Arthur Miller. And I am constantly harkened back to him talking in his monologue about the monolith. When we went over there because we believed we had this thing standing behind us that meant something. And when I came back, somebody had torn the fabric of it all. And that's, you could argue that's where we are right now. We're at a very weak point in the fabric of our society, of America, and we have to find the way that we re you know weave the blanket that makes who we are. The idea behind the melting pot. Well, at some point, sometimes we have to take out of that melting pot whatever it is that we're trying to forge to show our strength. And I think we're going through that kind of um, what happens when a caterpillar, what does it go through? That metamorphosis to a new image of self that is just as striking and incredible. And I think that's where we are. And as long as we continue to fight with value and courage and honor, just like Mandalorian, those shows that we loved, uh, we'll come out the other side, and I truly believe we'll be the butterfly we want to be.
I agree 100%. And I think it's important that we need to rely on ourselves more to and to care about all of humanity, to stop with division and
Stop.
just care about all of humanity. Like one of my good friends, Taco, the guy that's saying putting on the Ritz, he said we're all planetarians living on this planet. I love that type of analogy.
Well, yeah. And how about this? We used to, and I know I really do sound like um, who was Dennis the Menace's neighbor? I
Oh,
feel I
Mr.
sound like,
Wilson.
yeah, Mr. Wilson. We used to look out our windows and ask people to be better, ask our neighbors to be better. And now we've removed that right from ourselves. And I don't know why, um, because it doesn't make sense to me. Because if we leave it to the people in Sacramento or the people in Washington
Thank you.
to fix it, well, they can't. It's not that they made, like, I'm not so cynical to believe that nobody cares. But how do you fix something you can't see?
Mhm.
I mean, I can't, I don't know. I can't stick my hand in a hole, not be able to see, and fix something, not really fix it. I might be able to get it to work, but I'm never going to be able to fix it. The only way it gets fixed is right here or right here. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And if I don't talk to you and you don't talk to me, and we say, hey, you're a Democrat, I'm a Republican, and I can't, well, if I, like I sit, like, who talks to me? I'm a registered independent. What happens? Do either one of you talk to me or both resent me because I won't pick a side? Like one of the things that
Mhm.
when our founding fathers said was, parties are the danger of our system. And it's not because they want to be. I don't believe it's evil.
Mhm.
And we need to stop being so extreme and dramatic in everything we present. But we really do 100% need to talk, because the more we talk, and I mean talk and be vulnerable and talk, and I don't mean like I was beaten as a child. That's a brutal thing and that's a trauma. I mean, like, hey, what do we need? Like in my neighborhood, we're really good, but neighbors, we talk to each other. Hey, did you see that guy? Oh, I saw that, watch out. Hey, I'm gonna go outside and see somebody sitting out in front of your gate. I don't think you'll see him when you come out. Like we have these moments, and I'll come out and our neighbor would come to me and be like, saw a guy walking, went in your yard. And I'll be like, were my dogs good? Were they going after him? What it was, like we do that. We need to keep that pebble. That's just a pebble. But if we throw it in the pond hard enough, that ripple goes out, and we need to just keep doing it. And it'll come back. And it's like that feeling. If we don't do it, what happens? Like if I don't meet you, um, you know, we don't have this conversation, and maybe somebody's watching misses out on that moment. And if this is, I'm not the only guy who's saying it, you're not the only guy who's saying it. But if we keep saying it and everyone else keeps saying it, certain days people hear things. Certain days, as my wife will tell you, I can hear things. Certain days I don't. And it just depends on the moment. And if we don't keep ringing the bell, we lose it. And I think that's my biggest fear, is that people are going to stop ringing the bell, and they're going to, that's when hope is lost. And back to Star Wars, A New Hope is something that we need. There is a changing of the guard about to happen. And it's constant, but I think there's something, um,
And the thing that
just
resonates with Star Wars is it cares about all of humanity. You can tell it. You know what I mean?
every single person is accounted for, and not person like
Yeah, even
species or
the
creature, and has, look at Akbar. Nobody's calling him names.
no.
He's admiral, so get
Mhm.
out of his way, let him do his job. And those are in the 70s, when we went through a very tumultuous time, that was from a lot of years of whatever. And then Star Wars, being the mythological storytelling that it is, really brought a lot of people together without acrimony, because you could talk about something that had a real secret, deep thought to it, only to be, like, not like I can say to you, no, well, the Empire, they were the evil empire, right? But at the same time, their idea was based in something, blah, blah, blah. And we can have a conversation about it. And nobody went home and went like, I'm never talking to, you know, we're never having this conversation again. He's a crazy extremist. We were talking about Star Wars. And it was great. We had an argument about it. It was so good. And that's what we need more of.
I agree 100%, and more, family orientated things. I don't know if you remember growing up, they had these places called the Holiday Inn Holodomes, where
Oh
the
yeah.
Holiday Inn would have like the mini golf, would have pool,
I
would
forgot
have
about
foosball table, ping pong, pool tables. You know what? They
yeah.
actually filmed Jaws 2 at one of them.
Oh,
And
that's
that
awesome.
that opening scene, and then terms of
Yep.
endearment too. Well, anyways, there's still some around. I'm actually going later this year. There's one in Ohio that is it's a Howard Johnson's now, but it still has the pool, the ping pong table, the foosball, the arcade, you name it,
Wow.
the billiards. and it still has like the same, I mean, it's more modernized, of course, but it still has all the features, and it's just, you need more places like that where families can go, and be more family orientated, get
and
meet other
affordable.
families, you name it.
Think about it, like, you know, Disneyland, I take my family of three with my wife, like there's five of us. Before we even get through the door, we're looking at $1,000.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But like, think about it. Like when I was a kid, you get in, it was expensive, but it wasn't extraordinary.
Mhm.
Um, and you had to buy tickets, like I had an e-ticket and all those things. And you could buy a book and you got what you got. Now it's a little bit, you know, it's a lot different. But like the question is, like Dave and Buster's or those kind of things, which is it affordable? Can you walk in there with
Mhm.
your family and walk out and not be like, okay, so the rest of the week you're gonna eat whatever leftovers we have from there, and then after that, you just hope to God you get something from school. And like school lunches being the thing that feeds people. Like we had to our school stayed open during a flood that literally swept kids, not from the school I was in, thank God, but neighborly schools that were staying open because the flooding was so bad, the flash floods were so bad, it was picking up people, pulling them into the river, which was overflowing. And then, but they kept him have
Mhm.
to go to school more than likely because they needed to feed kids. Why is school feeding kids? Like, how did that become? I get it if you're there and we're providing meals, and that's a big deal, and it is a huge deal for these kids. Why isn't there a different entity that provides in that way? Why are we? Why is? I mean, I get it just blows my mind. Like this is why we can't have a separate government entity providing in the areas that it doesn't see. Like there's no
Mhm.
uh, homogenized approach. There's no just generalized approach. Just like education, there should not be a generalized approach. How do we keep family values? How do we do all those things? Um, Yet not forego education in schools. Why aren't we teaching and I don't care about the classics or anything. I mean, why aren't we teaching um, for education? Why are we teaching for things that don't fall in those things? I see it. I'm at school every day.
Mhm.
Why aren't we? Why is private school providing a better education now? Why? What is it that LAUSD or whatever, what are the school districts responsible for now that they're not able to do the one basic thing which,
Mhm.
which would provide and give hope and give, the value thing comes from home. That really, and it should be supported and reinforced everywhere else, but the values should come from home. How do you get values? Education. What kind of education matters? The kind that actually allows you. There's an alliance program out here, and there was once this kid who was like, I got into Dartmouth, full scholarship, the whole deal. He's like, his parents were like, he can't go. He's got to work and literally work at the taco stand so that we can, you know, make sure the lights stay on in our apartment. Well, we had to convince, well, I didn't. They had to convince him that if he went to Dartmouth, he could come back and take you out of poverty in a way that's permanent versus, you know, just fighting his way from there and not going to college. Like, so what they did, he was like, well, then, so they convinced parents they got that. And then he was like, I don't have a computer. I don't have shoes. I don't have a sweatshirt. So then they figured it out. And the Alliance, who had, raises money, there's a bunch of people who really work hard at this place. they went and provided for this kid and made it so he was able to. And so how do we fulfill that? Because that's the most important job of government, in my opinion. Education of the people. How do we educate people, and what are we educating them? How are we educating them in a way that allows them to advance our society as well as our knowledge, our communities? How do we do that? What is and I don't have the direct answer, but I know no matter what, how do you change poverty? Education. There's not a number, it's not food stamps, it's not more money, it's not uh none of that. It is 100% education, education, education. If you look at any society that thrives, their educational systems are exceptional because you create problem solvers. Where's our critical thinking? Are we teaching critical thinking? Whether it's direct or indirect critical thinking, are we teaching it? No. How can you teach anything if everything is okay?
Mhm. Yeah. What do you think too about, they should have access to healthy food? I'm really big
Oh
into
my,
eating healthy. Don't you think everyone should have
yes.
access to whether it be organic, non-GMO, you name it?
It first of all, it has to be non-GMO. Everything they
Hmm.
eat should be non-GMO, and there should
Yes.
be no standard below that. Like
Hmm.
this should be the bare minimum. Like, ew, all it is non-GMO, but that should be the bare minimum. And then they should not play around with the definition of that either. Like organic. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's organic. I grew it. Okay, but did you create it in a lab to grow it? Well, yeah, but it still falls under the definition of organic. They're like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. Like, why am I paying more for milk that hasn't been injected with 50,000 different things?
Hmm.
Why am I paying more for that? Why isn't that the standard? And then anything that's synthetic, because that should cost more. And then that cost should go into the effects that that synthetic blend causes to our physical health that are direct results of the Monsanto monster. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, I know
how do
exactly what you mean.
we?
And actually, they're owned by Bayer now, so now it's Bayer.
Oh
But
my
they
God!
still use Monsanto. Everyone goes by mine. I know it all too well, sadly, because see what I did, I grew up with Crohn's disease. I completely reversed all the symptoms by eating healthy, by staying away
God,
from
that's
that.
amazing. That is amazing. I didn't know. Like, there aren't healthy alternatives to solve everything. There aren't.
Hmm.
But I guarantee you, there are more than we are taught anymore.
Hmm.
I mean, my grandmother used to put garlic and Vaseline on my feet when I would have a fever, put me in socks, and it would draw out my fever. And it still does. And
Hmm.
it's still as effective as Tylenol or anything like that. And I'm not against those things. They have their use, but we've become so dependent and so crutched on it that we don't use the other things that allow those to be effective. Their efficacy is going away. There's a reason why penicillin is creating superbugs. It's not specifically creating them, but because we're using penicillin, the bugs are getting stronger so they can fight. It's nature. Nature is a vacuum and it abhors it and it will literally, you know, it's the survival of the fittest is 100% real. So why do we deny that? Why don't we find a way to make ourselves? Why aren't we like? There's this place that you can literally raise a cow, and then it's completely clean and free of anything except for the normal natural things, and hopefully some clean ground and clean water and groundwater and stuff. Um, and then when it's time, you butcher the cow and you eat this really fresh, incredible meat. And I've had it and I've done it, and there's nothing like it. And it's something that when we were kids, I don't think you're quite as old as me, but when we were kids that we just took for granted, that we were like, oh my God, you know, McDonald's cooked their burgers in front of us. Now they cook them probably in another country for all I know.
Yeah.
And then they bring them in a
Good
bag
point.
and they throw them in hot water and
Mhm.
then they'll throw them back on the grill for a second just to, heat it up.
Yeah.
Like, I could not be more disgusted just thinking about it.
Yeah, I know
Hey, by the
exactly.
way, I'd like to point out Mando got his Razor Crest back. Here it is.
Oh, there you go.
Mock Love jewelry. Oh, and I got my
Nice.
Mando. I'm wearing Mando.
Oh, very
So
nice. Yeah.
I had to get my Razor Crest back. I'm very excited.
Mhm. That's great. So, what do you have? Do you have anything coming up? Any events that you're going to? Because you do
Oh,
so
heck yeah.
touch on that a bit. You go left and right to these
Yeah.
Comic-Con
And
events, right?
I don't promote them, and I'm learning. I'm gonna get there in the way I need to. So I know this. You know what? I'm gonna look while I'm saying it.
Mhm.
Um, because I don't want to forget anything.
Knoxville is one of them, and I saw Prague.
Uh, yeah, so I go April 5th and 7th to the 7th. I'm going to Prague, and I just found out that my boy Heavy Mando has is
Mhm.
going to be there. Our queen, our leader, the armor, and Emily Swallow's going with me. So I know those two for sure. That's April 5th, 7th in Prague. I'm going to Holland, April 19th to the 22nd. And I love going there. They're incredible out there. I'll be in DC on May the 4th, uh, at a comic book store out there. It's going to be awesome. And then the next day, I'm throwing out the first pitch at the Nationals game.
Oh,
So I'm
wow.
super stoked on
There
that.
you go.
Uh, I'm going to London MCM Comic Con. First time I've been to London
Mhm.
with Mando, and that one's like I've been trying to go to London and Lucasfilm, those kind of things. Just never really I wasn't allowed to for a while, and then not because London didn't want me there, but because it was just how Lucasfilm wanted to roll out the story. So now I get to go to London for my first time with this. I'll be in Texas for Rebel Scum Con, June 27th to 29th. I cannot wait to get out to Tennessee, Knoxville. I'm going out the 12th through the 14th, I believe. That's with Fanboy. And they were the first one I ever did a signing with, other than a private signing I had done. So that was really cool to get back with them. And probably going to see my buddy Steve Byrne, uh, who lives not too far from there, just a couple hours. Um, he's going to come out. I did couples retreat with him. He just did. He's a great comedian. You all should watch him. Tell you right now. I'm also. He's doing a. If you're out in Pittsburgh area, you should get tickets to go see his uh, Mario Lemieux Foundation fundraiser. That's Steve Byrne right there.
Oh,
I did
nice.
this last year with him. He's incredible, dude. Uh, after that, after Knoxville, September, I believe I go to Orlando. So I'm
Oh,
going
there
to
you
Florida
go.
for the first time in a while. So that's going to be great. And then might be going out somewhere in Tennessee again later on in October.
Nice. You need to
So
come
and then I
to
know
North Carolina sometime, but there's probably no
I'm
events.
dying. No, there is.
Or South Carolina,
I,
even. I've heard there's some in South Carolina sometimes.
I'm South Carolina. It would be incredible. I don't know how close that is to you,
I'm like
but
an hour away from Myrtle Beach. So I'm like
oh,
in the
okay.
perfect spot, you know?
Yeah, I got a buddy out there, BJ, who's just a stud, fought for this country, and is just a really good guy. You talk about values and strength. He's out there. I'd love to do that, and then I could go. His wife's a teacher. I'd love to go out and um, do a day at the school and say hi to the kids. So yeah, South Carolina. I got to remember that one.
And
But they
and one
they
thing
have
that I
them in
love
North
about
Carolina.
here is I live I don't know if you know, I live like 7 minutes from the beach, 7 minutes from Wrightsville
So
Beach, and I live
I
like
follow
8
you,
minutes
so
from
yeah.
downtown, which is the harbor front of Wilmington. It's just
Oh,
such a
oh,
great.
you know what else I'm doing?
Okay.
And so wait, I'll be in Washington the 5th,
Hmm.
4th and 5th. The following weekend, or the 9th and 10th, I'm going to be in Fort Worth at the John Wayne Experience, where we
Wow.
have all
Okay.
that John Wayne memorabilia, and they tell the story of my grandfather from birth to death, pretty much, and how his legacy lives on. I'll be there doing a signing there with them, promoting, and then there's also the PBR has got in the stockyards. We got the Fort Worth finishing up, and the finals will be there, and we'll be doing a live show from there. So that's going to be incredible. Like I cannot wait for that because that's just, I mean, I can't even begin to tell you. I'm very excited because it's my granddaddy, so I get to go there and hang out at the John Wayne experience. So if you're in Texas or around and feel like taking a drive, come down, see me. Let's go have some fun because that Fort Worth is going to be, I promise you, that's going to be, you might see a little bit of a young Brendan Wayne come out of me then.
Here you go. Excellent. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. You'll have to, come back
Let's make
sometime.
this regular. Let's try to make it like once a month or once every couple
Oh,
months.
I would love it. And you'll have, so what, before before your time is done on this earth, you need to film out here in Wilmington. I'm telling you, there's.
Oh, I know that I do know. Like well, one of my buddies who actually did some standing and double work for Mando, um, Brent Walker,
Mhm.
North Carolina boy, and he was the closest guy to walk like me in the suit. So yeah, I got to go see him. And if you're, yeah, he's got an incredible. If you have hats, cowboy or otherwise, he's got a
Mhm.
backpack that'll carry on. Put your hats in it. That it won't break them. It'll keep them so that nothing crushes them. You can put them up in the bin in an airplane, and you can travel with them. I don't go every con I go to. That hat pack is on my back. So if you look them up on the Instagram, hat pack, the greatest. You should all give them out as gifts. And I know I'm supposed to be promoting myself, but that's
No, I know what you mean.
my, the wisdom and knowledge five is if you give it out, it comes back tenfold in ways that you never expect. And that's the way we go, right?
Yes. Thanks so much for coming on. I'm going to close out by saying, we want to encourage everyone to, start caring about all of humanity and start, taking
Come
care of
on
yourself. Yes. Thanks so
and
much.
share. Do
Yes.
you know how we care? We care if we share. Do you know what I mean?
Thank
Like,
you.
let's
Yes.
talk. Don't be ready to fight about it. Let's talk and figure it out because I guarantee you, we don't have the same views, but we might want the same results. So let's
Hmm.
figure out which path we're going down. I'll take a page out of my grandfather's book. He used to write letters. He figured out how to stop nuclear proliferation. And they would handwrite letters and recommend books to each other. They were opposed party wise, but they were of one mind, knowing that they wanted this country to be better, the world to be safer. And at the end of the day, that's all we want. So let's love
Yeah.
each other, share your wisdom and your knowledge and your experience, and it might help us all out.
Yes. Thanks so much.